John was in the bank. It was Wednesday morning. It had been 3 days since the wedding, and he was still laughing as he remembered the scene. A large contingency dressed as Scottish noblemen. Jenny looking like Marion from Robin Hood. John Nation dressed like what Hollywood portrayed as the head Indian chief should look like. It looked more like a costume party than a wedding. John was interrupted by a man coming into the bank. He had a bag and a note from the hardware store. This gold weighs in at 3.8 pounds at 89% purity. We determine a value equal to 40 gold coins and 14 silver. We recommend offering 36 gold 1-ounce coins and 13 silver 1-ounce coins. The man did not speak. When John showed him the note that Herb at the hardware store had written, the man smiled and nodded. John called Patty over and asked her if she had seen a scale anywhere. Patty ran off and brought back a box, a digital scale in many different sized boxes. The weight matched Herb's note. On a blank piece of paper, John wrote 36 gold coins and 13 silver coins and drew 2 lines. He signed it and put it in front of the man. The man signed it and John handed it to Patty. "Can you fulfill this transaction, please?" "Sure." Patty moved towards the vault. John looked to the man. "Did it rain where you live?" The man nodded his head. "Are you going to stay in town long?" The man shook his head. Patty brought out the requisite coins, handed them to John, and the 2 men counted them out to confirm the correct amount. John shook hands. "Will you be coming back soon?" "Next week," James Abel responded. "Mr. Abel, have you come in before?" John asked. "Yes, last Wednesday," Mr. Abel shared. "How did you get paid?" John was curious now. "Like this." He pointed to the gold and silver coins. James Abel said thank you and left. John called up Herb at the hardware store. "Hi, Herb, Hi, John Taylor. I've been expecting this phone call for a while now." "How much and where do I look?" John asked. "Probably enough to do. You're $450 million in projects twice over. Don't know where he's kept it." Herb Fullerton replied, "We've had gold mining going on for 100 years, and Anthony at the bank became regional manager when his boss got into some ice and drove into a tree 20 years ago. No one wanted to live in the area, so Anthony got the job by default." "What is your cut in all this?" John asked. "I'm sure you'll figure it out anyway, so I might as well tell you. I buy some of the repossessed houses from the bank for little or nothing. I hang on to them for 6 months and then sell them for what I can get." Herb took a deep breath. "Am I in trouble?" "Not from me. Got any inventory?" John asked. 4 houses. You can have them back for what I paid for them." Herb volunteered. "That's a deal. Is that how Anthony made his working capital for his gold transactions?" John asked. "Yeah," Herb answered. "Is there a way to make gold and silver coins in this area?" John asked. "My uncle is a retired engineer. I'll have him come see you." Herb offered. "Did Anthony ever have any coins made?" John asked. He looked up and saw Patty leading a man over to him. The man collapsed into a seat. John mouthed to Patty, "Water." "Not that I am aware of. The coins Uncle Samuel has made are all dated 1989, for both the silver dollar and the gold eagle. If you see any of those, then you probably are looking at my uncle's work." "The state's centennial," John said. "Yeah, he was 56 and able to retire that year." Herb shared. "Thanks, Herb. I got somebody sitting in front of me. Thanks for your information." John informed, "You're welcome, Mr. Taylor. Have a good afternoon." Herb finished and hung up. John looked up and offered a thank you to Gaia, then he turned to the man. "How can I help you?" "I'm Cecil Angstrom." He held out his hand to John when the water showed up. "Thank you, miss. You're a lifesaver." Cecil took a long drink, then reached into his folder and brought out 2 brochures, one of a battery-operated smart car and another for a gas version of the same car. "I hear you guys deal with gold and silver." "Yeah, we do," John answered. "My rig has 40 brand new smart cars. I'll sell you all of them for 81-ounce golden eagles," Cecil offered. "How many do you have?" John took a drink from his water. Cecil looked at John for a second. "I have 1,000 of each, less what I have with me today." "2 gold coins for each one?" John asked. "Yeah, can I see the gold?" Cecil asked. "I would like to make sure I'm not wasting our time." Come with me. John led Cecil into the vault, pushed the door button, and then led him into the back room. How much do you have? Cecil asked. 20 tons. John answered, We got 50 tons of silver too. Cecil took a deep breath and said, Let me call up my plant. They need to get busy, and I'll also call up my East Coast supplier. I've got some calls to make too. John grabbed his phone. One by one, he called his friends and family to let them know about this new opportunity. Johnny, hi, how do you like your smart car? Do you love it? Can you come to the bank? I'm buying a few thousand of them. On the way, Dad, Johnny said. Margaret, do you like smart cars? John asked. Hi, John. We were just talking about you. My hubby is here. He says you have a truckload of little cars at your bank. Margaret laughed. Smart cars. John shared. They get really good mileage. Save me one. We are on the way. Margaret's smile came through the phone. Sherry, how are you guys doing? John asked his sister, You don't know what to do? Do you want to manage a car dealership? I have 40 smart cars and almost 2,000 more coming our way. There is also a place to live on the property. Come to the bank. See you soon. John, there is a Chester Turner who roomed with me at WSU. He's a good guy, but he's bored to death working as a mechanic for his dad. I would recommend you have him involved somehow. Just then, Cecil got a call. Yeah, Percy? Cecil mouthed. This is my supplier. Cecil listened to what had happened to the East Coast. Lose any cars? Cecil listened and smiled. Got any to sell me? I'm out of inventory. We'll need 4,000, half electric and half gas. What are you willing to take for money? 1.5 ounces? He looked to John for confirmation. At John's nod, he said, I think we can make that work. I'll call you back. Cecil, do you have Chester's phone number? John asked. I think I've heard his name before. Yes. Cecil reached for his phone again. Can you call him? Get him here? John asked as Cecil nodded and put the phone to his ear. John saw Margaret and John Nation show up. They were looking at all the different colors on the car carrier. John saw his son Johnny and Teresa show up and start talking to the Nations. Samuel and Sherry walked into the bank parking lot, followed closely by a man he did not recognize. The man put his phone away at the same time as Cecil. Chester's here, Cecil said. Let's move to the table. John pulled a 9th chair to the table. Everyone came in and took a seat. Patty brought water for everyone. John also had her bring in 80 gold coins. After everyone was seated, John asked, I heard today this area has had a gold mining operation for close to 100 years. Anybody know anything about it? I've heard some rumors. I've been given gold coins as donations that I've held on to. Something seemed different about them. John Nation shared. John laid the heavy plastic box full of gold he had exchanged today on the table. This has over 3 pounds of 89% pure gold. A man came in today, and from the few words he spoke, I gathered he has been coming in here every week for a long time. Who is he? Margaret asked. He signed his name James Abel. John shared. The only James Abel that I know of died a while back. John Nation shared. John only had blank faces to read, so he went back to why they were here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cecil Angstrom. He has an assembly plant. Actually, did you say where you're based out of? John looked at Cecil. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Cecil filled in. Gesturing to the other newcomer at the table, John said, This young man is Chester Turner, an associate of Cecil's. Chester is my cousin's son. How is your dad treating you, Chester? John Nation asked. He says I work too fast. Chester laughed. Everyone laughed with him. Mr. Angstrom is willing to sell us smart cars at 1.5 ounces of gold each. John looked around the table. We could sell them at $100 each, John suggested. By way of introduction, I wondered if I might offer a couple of suggestions. You folks seem like you're new to the car selling business. As the table collectively nodded, Chester said, Electric vehicles need to have charging stations. I suggest 2 things. Sell the electric cars at $150 and the gas-operated at $1,200. The additional $50 per battery-powered vehicle will go towards paying for the charging stations. At this, Cecil broke in. To run a viable dealership, you need at least 20% for overhead and sales commissions just to break even, Cecil suggested. That won't give you much of a profit. The bank makes our profit on a car loan with a 4% interest. John smiled. This looks like a win all around. The community wins by not needing as much gas. The people win by being able to stay mobile. And we have another industry and more jobs. John smiled. Cecil, do you have a dealer's package? Samuel asked. What's a dealer's package? Johnny asked. A dealer's package has parts to be able to fix your cars. Ours consist of 4 of each type of car, thousands of air filters, gas filters, spark plugs, etc. I would suggest a dealer package for every 2,000 cars in the area. They are going to run about 15 gold coins each. Cecil shared. I have several. They come in mighty handy when the maintenance department tries to fix a car. Chester shared. Parts for things are getting really hard to find. John moved the 80 coins to Cecil across the table. Let's do this. Unload them here for now. We will get the other site prepared for selling cars. Dad, I think I know more about the features of the smart car than anybody else in town. It will be a low-pitched sale, but I can do this. Johnny shared. Cecil turned to Chester. Want to give me a hand? Then he turned to Johnny. Are you also interested in helping? Both Chester and Johnny got up. Me too. I can answer phones, process payments, and write up loans. I've done all that. Teresa shared. It was for the furniture industry, but it can't be that much different. Teresa, I can show you the ropes, Sherry said. So it went around the table. Margaret wanted the pink one. Take it home, Margaret. John suggested, maybe we can put a sign on the back of it that says, cars for sale. We'll never get advertising like that from anyone else. John Nation just looked at John Taylor. Well, if we don't do something, I believe we'll be riding horses again. John Taylor smiled. I haven't ridden a horse in a long time. John Nation shared. Blakey was just born again. In your travels, you will come upon a mare with a new foal, and that little fellow will come and greet you. John was repeating what Gaia was telling him. He got up and went into the vault and got 3 gold coins and brought them back and placed them into John Nation's hand. Come on, let's go look at the black one. Margaret was pulling her John out the door. I thought you wanted pink, John Nation asked. Not in this lifetime. I want you to ride with me. Margaret rolls her eyes. Jenny came over with an ice-cold cream soda in hand for John. Did we buy some little cars? She asked. Yes, dear. John replied with a smile. Can I have one? Jenny said. Okay, as long as it's not pink. With that, Samuel, Sherry, and John started laughing. What's so funny? Jenny asked. Margaret had the chief going for a while. She kept saying she wanted a pink smart car. John was still chuckling. Then they get up and went out to see the cars, and she announces she wants a black one. Of course, the chief wants to know why, and she announced it was because she wanted him to ride with her. John summarized. And that's funny? Jenny couldn't see the humor in it. Honey, I think you had to be here. John kissed his wife. Are there any license places open anymore? Jenny asked. April, can you check to see if there is any way to get a driver's license? John asked. Okay, boss, April announced. John rolled his eyes. Jenny and Sherry laughed, and Samuel tried to conceal his smile. I'll do it, Samuel announced. Jenny, I would like to introduce you to the new management team of the little car dealership. John looked pleased with himself. That's just Samuel and Sherry there, Jenny asked. Yeah, but they have enough knowledge to make it work. Now I can keep on being a bankster and a politician. I need some classes on how to screw people. I'm probably failing at being a real bankster. Did you ever notice before the earth changes how we never had any ex-bankers for politicians? I suspect they never wanted to take the pay cut. Everyone laughed at John's statement. Let's go look at the cars. Margaret was getting a how-to lesson from Johnny. Margaret got it figured out, and Teresa took the blue plastic off the windshield. Johnny got out, and the chief got in, and Margaret took the chief for a test drive. Off they went. More people showed up to look at the cars. April went into the bank and brought out a receipt book. She handed it to Teresa. So far, the bank had passed the $1 million mark in exchanging silver for greenbacks. When the chief and Margaret came back, the chief was driving. The chief had a big smile on his face. "What color do you like, Jenny?" John asked. "I like that gold color with the silver," Jenny said, holding her breath. "Johnny?" John caught his son's attention. "Can you take my lady for a spin in that gold one?" John got a big hug. He looked, and Patty gave him a big smile. "I like that one with the red stripes," Patty said. "Uncle John, there's no answer at the license place. I like the green one. I had to leave my car in Auburn," April said. There were 11 cars claimed before they closed. Johnny and Samuel were busy. Teresa and Sherry were making up documents as they were needed. John was sitting next to the door to the bank laughing. The new cars were drawing a crowd by the time school got out. Tony came up to the bank. He thought the little cars were cute. "Come in, we had something interesting happen today." John told Tony, "Take a look at this." John showed Tony the plastic box with more than 3 pounds of gold nuggets in it. "Have you seen anything like it before?" Tony thought for a second. "I've seen the plastic boxes." Tony put the lid on the sturdy little box. He looked to the safety deposit vault. "I wonder if there is a false wall in there." "Let's go see." John and Tony entered the vault. John noticed Tony turned on both light switches. "Close your eyes for a minute." John turned off one light switch and the area that they were in got dark. John closed the door. "Open your eyes, Tony. See anything?" "I see the light along the bottom of the door that we came in," Tony said. "Turn around and look at the far wall," John suggested. "I don't see anything," Tony observed. "Let me turn this switch off again," John stated. "There. When I squat, I can see light at the bottom." "There's a door, Dad," Tony said. "I'm turning on the lights again." John began looking for something that looked like a doorbell button. Tony was at the other wall on his hands and knees. He reached into a recessed box and pushed a button. There was a click and part of the wall moved an inch. "Found it, Dad." Tony opened the door and they moved into the back room. What they found was 2 sets of sagging shelving. John recognized the plywood shelves made for what is called railroad car decking would have to be heavily weighed down to sag like that. The shelving fit the 8-by-8-foot room perfectly. On the right set of shelves were stacks of gold coins. Tony held up one and showed John, 1989. Are they all 1989 dates?" Tony looked at many. "Yeah, why are they so old?" "The hardware man's uncle has a coin machine, but he only has one stamp and that is with the 1989 date." John explained, "This all was owned by your dad, Tony. He repossessed people's homes, paid little to the bank for them, and sold them for a good profit. He used the money to buy this gold." John shared in a sad voice, "My last name is Taylor." "Same as you, thank you, Dad." "What do we do with this now?" Tony laughed. "We melt it down and make ourselves coins and buy little cars." John laughed as he hugged his son. "Someday you will want to take your girl on a date. We will have a little car for you to do it with." "Cool," Tony laughed, thinking of Willa. When John and Tony came out, there was an older gentleman patiently standing there. John put out his hand to greet him. "Sam Fullerton?" John asked. "Yes, you must be John Taylor," the man assumed. "Yes, and this is my son Tony. He owns the bank." John shared. The man shook Tony's hand. "Sorry about your mom and dad." "Thank you, Mr. Fullerton." Tony said, "God has given me a new mom and dad." "Tony, can you go get 3 of the gold coins with the 1989 date for us?" John asked. "Sure, Dad." Tony ran off towards the vaults. "Shall we sit down at the table?" John asked. "Sure," Sam said. "He called you Dad? His new dad?" "My wife and I adopted Tony and his siblings the day we arrived in Omak." John smiled. Tony came up to the table and laid the 3 gold coins down. John retrieved the box with 3 pounds of gold in it. He pulled a gold coin out of his desk and turned the 3 coins face down and placed the 4th one also face down. They looked identical. John turned them over and the same thing occurred with the face up. They were identical except for the date. "You do really good work, sir." "Thank you." Sam paused for a minute. "My wife's sick. I can't do this anymore." Sam sounded sad. "I have to take care of her." John listened for a minute. I'm hearing from God that we can heal your wife and God will turn both of your immortality genes on. Mr. Taylor, heal my wife. I would be most grateful, Sam Fullerton shared. If you live for another 100 years, would you like to have a job? John asked. If my wife and I live for another 100 years in good health, we will need a job to live. Sam thought aloud. Pensions are gone, Social Security is gone, stocks are all gone, and my nice savings account in another bank is gone. Where's your wife? John asked. The two men turned to see Jenny and Hazel enter the front lobby, where John had his desk and work table. Hazel was walking slow, but without her cane or any other assistance. Sam stood and took his wife Hazel into his arms. Are you all right, honey? Sam asked. Sam, this little girl healed much of me. Hazel looked around. Where did she go? Here I am. I got you some water to drink. Jenny announced as she came up to the desk. How many coins do you want to make? Sam asked. Sam laid a 5th gold coin on the desk with the other 4. Everyone looked at it, and then John turned it over. It had a 2018 date on it. John's smile covered his face. Tony, shall we show everyone here what we discovered? Tony picked up the 2018 coin and one of the other gold coins John purchased in Seattle. They look identical. Yeah, Dad, let's do that. Tony got up and everyone followed him to the vault. How much is here? Jenny asked. We think there are 3 or 4 tons here. The way the shelves are sagging, that would make perfect sense. John volunteered. Sam was looking at a clipboard, 7,847 pounds, with a date of 2 weeks ago. Dad, here is last week's box. Tony handed it to John. 3 pounds 7 ounces, plus the 3 pounds and 8 ounces for today, that makes 7 pounds and 3 ounces. John shook his head. Gold is measured by the system of 12 troy ounces to the pound. I'm assuming raw gold would be measured the same way. John shared. That makes 7,854 pounds. It is coming in at an average of more than 200 pounds a year. By this time next year, we should be able to make around 85,000 gold coins, Sam shared. John looked at Tony and then Jenny. Come next door. Everyone made their way into the back room of the big vault. How much in gold bricks? Sam asked. 10 tons, John answered. Silver bricks? Sam asked. 40 tons, John answered. Are you thinking of turning the silver into coins too? Sam asked. If it's possible, sure, John answered. Then if I can recommend a production schedule to you? At John's sometimes nod, he continued. I recommend 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. That'll produce about 8,600 coins per week. Labor will be about 10 silver coins per week. Sam had a little calculator he was working on. I met your nephew Eric and his wife at Sue's one day. The conversation bounced around until we were talking about making coins. They both said they would love to learn to do that. They are young, eager, happy, and intelligent. I think they would work well. Need 2 more for the graveyard shift. Tony looked to his dad with a questioning look written on his face. Not now. This year you are going to grow and take on many responsibilities. Next summer, ask if you can be involved. I think it would be very important for you to know how to coin real money. Maybe you can work in to become the relief for people when they need some time off for the garden or just for vacations. John finally got a smile on Tony's face. Sam looked at Tony. I think your dad has a good plan. I agree with him. This would be good for you to know. Sam looked outside. What are all these little cars? Our future. They get 30 to 40 miles per gallon. Half of them are electric powered. We will have 1,000 of each of them to sell. Hopefully, we can reduce our gas consumption by half or more in the years ahead. John shared. That would be a win for mankind. Sam shared.